Okay, well, I was a kindergarten teacher, and so early literacy is very important to me, and so that's what I'm going to be speaking about today. There's been a good bit of research on early literacy development and emergent literacy, and some of the interesting findings that I wanted to share with you is that children who are read at least 3 times a week at home with their families are much more likely to show emergent literacy skills than students who are not read to as frequently. What's interesting about this is we've got a developing line of research that shows that children who have not been read to at home can still make up some of those effects when their teachers provide excellent interactive reading opportunities within schools and classrooms. And so one of the things that we've learned is that the specific technique of interactive reading can really accelerate children's literacy development, and it's important because we can develop print awareness, socio and emotional learning experiences, vocabulary, and text comprehension. And when you have text comprehension, you can make connections to what's going on in the world around you. When we choose books, we want to follow students' needs as well as curricular needs. One of the resources that I find pretty valuable and one that I recommend to teachers is on scholastic.com. It's a tool called Book Wizard. And if you have a student who likes a particular type of genre or is reading at a particular level that you want to provide more resources in, you can go into Book Wizard, enter the information that you have about the child, their reading level, their interests, if they prefer fiction, nonfiction, or other genres of text, and then you can find additional titles that are similar. And so it's one way that we can help meet their needs. If they're interested in things about animals, for example, you can find many more books about animals and therefore engage and interest the child. We want to make sure that we're considering a wide range of genres and a wide range of formats. So we want to make sure that we are repeated reading and reading a variety of books on different topics. It's okay when students want to hear the same story again and again and again, and that's something that we find we need to explain to parents because they're sick of reading the same book, but we know that it's very valuable for the children. Interactive book reading is one of the most important ideas because it shares print-related skills with students. Print awareness is one of the greatest predictors of later reading ability. What a child knows in pre-K about literacy and books translates to how quickly they learn to read in kindergarten and first grade. What they understand about reading in first grade predicts high school comprehension. And so when we think about reading with young children, we want to make sure that we're really starting young and providing them with excellent opportunities to engage with print because it's going to have lasting effects throughout their lifetimes. These are some of the skills that we're developing when we read with a print-related focus. And what I recommend to teachers and to parents is that they choose books that have lots of things that they can talk about with their families and with their students and choose a different target each time they read the book. That way, when they're repeatedly reading the same book again and again, there's something different to engage everyone. And that way, parents and teachers don't get tired of the same story, and children find something new to learn each time they read. So print knowledge, like I said, is the best predictor of children's reading achievement, and we know that they cannot develop that awareness of print without multiple experiences and exposures and opportunities to discuss and engage in print with their families and with their teachers. This is an excerpt page from Pete the Cat, which is a very popular early childhood series. And one of the reasons that this book is successful with children is the illustrations are engaging, but also the text has multiple opportunities to engage children. And we know that before children read, they don't pay much attention to the print that's on the page. Their attention is spent on the illustrations. And when we have a book like this, where the text is written in blue, and then the color white shows up in white, it gives us an opportunity to talk to our children and engage them. This is the kind of text that engages students because it's colorful, it's interesting, and it's not just the black on the page that they have no interest in because they don't yet know how to read. They see the musical notes, they see the illustration that clearly shows he loves his white shoes because you see the heart and the image of the shoe, and it's something that children can engage with very easily. This is another example. This is Rumble in the Jungle, which is also another popular early childhood book. And Even though the children aren't paying much attention to the text that's written on the page, they're noticing the ants crawling around the bottom of the illustration. And the ants say, munch, munch. This is an opportunity for readers to share with the children that the ants are saying munch. And each time the ants appear throughout the story, they say munch. And it gives the children something to look for, and it really engages them into print. This works as a springboard to get children engaged in reading, because then they start looking for the munch munch. I have a 4-year-old, and her favorite thing to do when we read these books is to find the print within the illustrations and find out what it means. In this example, we see font changes and environmental print. Again, these are some of the heavy hitters for early childhood books, and those of you who work with young children are smiling because this is a familiar story. Miss Bindergarten Gets Ready for Kindergarten has print that runs on the page, and it's interesting. It's not a straight left to right linear progression as in typical English, but it curves and it has color and it highlights the letters, and so we can talk. There's a B. There's a B in your name. Let's look at these other letters that might be in names of our friends. And here in the illustration on the right, Miss Bindergarten is hanging mobiles, and that's what she's got in her hands. And then the box at the bottom of the page says mobiles. And that gives us another opportunity to help engage children in the text and in the print. It's a wonderful springboard for our youngest learners. This is a book called Bunny Cakes. Max and Ruby are popular childhood characters. There's even a PBS television show about Max and Ruby. It's a brother and sister. Max is not yet reading. Ruby is his older sister who's very exasperated with him. And throughout the story, they're trying to make Grandma a birthday cake. Pretty typical activity for young children, but Max gets in the way and he breaks the egg. So Ruby sends him to the store with a list. The list gives us an opportunity to engage children in the print because she's clearly written eggs. And so your students are going to want to know what is on that list. Max wants to add his own special treat. He wants red hot marshmallow squirters. And so he writes it on the list. And so we're seeing emergent literacy development here, highly engaging for students. And it's fun for us to read as adults. And so they go through the story. The grocer can't read Max's writing because he's scribbling as young children do. But he can read Ruby's writing that says eggs, and he gives Max eggs. And as the story progresses, Max continues to spill ingredients and gets sent back to the store multiple times. Each time he tries a different way to write red hot marshmallow squirters in a way that the grocer can understand. Finally, he draws a picture. And this is one of the things that we teach our youngest learners to do. Use a picture to illustrate your thinking so that I know what it is you want me to write for you. And so here he's written in his way, red hot marshmallow squirters, and he can't wait to see how the grocer reacts to this one. And this time the grocer understands why it must be red hot marshmallow squirters, and he gives Max his treat. And so Max is able to finish making his pretend birthday cake for his grandmother. Ruby's ready to finish making their real cake for their grandmother. And their grandmother's so excited she doesn't know which one to enjoy first. It's a fun story for our youngest ones, but it also shows children the importance of learning how to communicate through writing. Interactive book reading is also excellent for meaning-related skills. So we think about inside-out skills and outside-in, the things that are within us, our comprehension, our verbal abilities, and the things that we rely on others for, those print skills. Thinking in terms of language development, awareness of text structure, narrative and nonfiction both, as well as listening comprehension, everything can happen through a read-aloud at the younger grades. Things to think about, and things that we teach our teachers, is that interactive reading is a SNAP, and it's a simple acronym. Choose a book and preview it. Make sure that it's appropriate for your interests and for your children's interests. Make sure that there are things that you can talk about within the story. 2 to 4 new vocabulary words. It's very easy for us as mature readers to overload children's vocabulary, but we want to focus on just a couple of new words. When we do this, we're going to introduce the vocabulary before reading. We're going to discuss the words as we come across them in the text, and then we're going to revisit them after reading, very briefly. An entire interactive read aloud adds maybe 5 minutes to a regular reading experience. So when we read a book aloud to young children, we typically think 10 to 15 minutes. Adding the interactive discussions really adds just about 5 minutes to it, so it's still manageable, it still holds the children's interest, and it gives us opportunities to develop their literacy. We want to have a few discussion points throughout the book. That's the access. We want to make sure that they have access to the text and they understand what they're hearing. And then we want to make sure that we have a clear purpose for sharing that particular text. Fiction, nonfiction, genre-related, curricular-related, or interest-related. We want to make sure that we know exactly why we're reading that book. Wordless picture books invite students to engage in stories in any language. And I particularly like these to help develop students' awareness of text structure as well as sequencing of events. We want children to understand beginning, middle, and end. Stories have problems and solutions. Nonfiction text is a little bit different. So when we're using wordless picture books, we're really focusing on fictional stories and narratives. These are some examples of some really interesting and useful wordless picture books. And I also like to use these with English learners because it doesn't matter what language the child speaks in the home, there aren't any words in the text, so it's free to open up to any language, any ability, and children of varying ability levels can all speak. So this also works with our cognitively diverse children who may or may not have the skills to express themselves in oral language. We're going to look at a little excerpt of Flotsam, which is the one in the bottom right. This is actually a Caldecott winner, so this one's an award-winning book. One of the things that you notice right away in this text is he has a very old-fashioned camera. And this is something that we have to explain to our students now because nobody's going to recognize this as a camera. We're all going to pull out our phone. And so we need to make sure that children understand that at one point, cameras were big and boxy, and they used this weird stuff called film. Because frankly, nobody knows what these things are anymore. And he notices when he's at the beach that he pulls this camera out of the water. It's growing barnacles. It has a picture of an octopus on it, and it says it's an underwater camera. You know, these are fascinating things for children because, what is that thing? And so you can go through and tell the story. And what I want you to do is look at some of these images from the book. We're not going to go through the whole thing, but think about how you would explain the story to a student or to your own children. You can see here the progression of events in the story. We're looking at how English text structure runs from left to right and top to bottom on the page. This is very useful for children who are learning English and how English stories are developed because they can start to see that progression, but they're doing it through images. So they don't have the added burden of text and words. They're telling the story based on their own interest. And this gives us lots of opportunities to engage them and explain that thing, that yellow cylinder at the bottom that he's holding is a film canister. My daughter's never seen one. Have your children? No. And then we get to talk about what a photo developing store looks like. I remember sitting on the bench waiting for my pictures to be developed. But this is something that we have to explain to children now. What do you think he's going to see when he's gotten his film developed? So we can talk about predictions and how to use the text events to choose and determine what's going to happen next. It's a combination of prior knowledge and information from the text. What do you think he sees? And this is one of the things that makes this book so fascinating is you can see in the images all of the children are holding pictures of other children holding pictures. And he pulls out a magnifying glass. Again, this is a teachable moment. We have these in our science centers, but do we use them regularly to look at pictures? Probably not. And then he pulls out a microscope because everybody takes those to the beach. And so now we can talk about black and white film and the relative age of these photographs. And some of them look like my parents and grandparents. which is another thing that they can't relate to very easily. And then he takes his own picture and has it developed.
It's a selfie. It's a selfie.
Yeah, he took a selfie with the selfie stick. And he puts the camera back in the ocean. So now our final prediction is, where do you think the camera is going to go next? Who might find it? Have you ever found anything at the beach? And so it's a really interesting story for students, but it's something that works for any age learner, and something that really gives us an opportunity to discuss events in text, progression, sequencing, prediction, and then confirmation of our prediction. Did you predict he would see that many images? How did you revise your prediction? These are all very important comprehension strategies that we teach our children, but when we do it through a wordless picture book, it's a very interesting way to tackle it. Okay. So one of the things I like to do to end with students is ask them to predict and then follow up with them. In a classroom, children will be talking to each other. Turn and talk. Tell your shoulder partner what it is you think is going to happen next, and then how do you know? And we give them physical signals, like thumbs up if your prediction was correct, thumbs down if you wanted to change your prediction. We give them opportunities that they can continue to engage, so that way the read aloud doesn't get too derailed, because everyone has a story that they want to share, but it also gives them opportunities to share with each other. So thank you very much for your time.